Thank you so much, Stormy, for coming all this way and talking again. As you say, a lot's changed since 2018, and particularly with, I really just hearing you there, you really get the sense of your frustration.
Yeah, that's a good way.
Yeah, and particularly, I find it, I remember when the first news of the indictment came out in this country, it was on, all the news stations, and they're interviewing Trump supporters, and everyone just said, oh, well, clearly it's not true, just was sort of entirely shut down. And one of the words Trump, or one of the phrases Trump uses a lot for things like this is the phrase witch hunt, which has sort of the sense that what he's being accused of is impossible, right? As in witchcraft is an imaginary crime. Do you think that that's sort of approach that Trump takes, where if you criticize him, you must be wrong? There's no factual evidence that can be used to prove his thing. Do you think that that's what leads into all of these supporters being entirely closed-minded and shut off?
I mean, that's just one of his tactics for sure. Like it's typical narcissistic gaslighting behavior, spin it around, you know what I mean? Luckily, I love this game, and I'm better at it than him. So his go-to was to insult my looks and call me a horse face. So of course I was like, you just told the world that you're into bestiality. Good job, Mr. President. You know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty good at spinning it. But yeah, and like I said, that goes to the very end of what I just said. People are like, if he hadn't said anything at all, nobody would notice. Or if somebody said something nice, no one would notice. But instead, he resorts to calling people names, witch hunts, horseface, con job, nasty woman. Which he's never called me nasty woman, and that'd be the one time he'd probably be right. Which just proves how stupid he is as well. But that anybody who reads that is gonna go, oh, click, 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 and that just feeds, they call it feeding the trolls, but in this case, it's not the trolls, it's a machine, and we are all just part of it. And yes, that is one of his tactics as well, of course. And I forgot to mention this, but this is how kind of messed up. And I'm not here to change anyone's political views or religious views or morals or your opinions on the adult industry or pornography. If it's not for you, I support it. That's fine. I don't like it, don't watch it. Don't want to have an abortion, don't have sex. Everybody should have the right to their own choices, and that's what I'm all about for sure. But the hypocrisy is what kills me. That is what kills me. You know what I mean? You bang 100 chicks, maybe you had to leave your hoodie with one of them, and you're a stud. You bang 100 dudes, you're a whore. That's what I'm saying, it's the hypocrisy of that. E. Jean Carroll just won $5 million in her lawsuit against Donald Trump for defamation, and I am thrilled for her. I have no personal knowledge of that situation. I have never met her. I was not there, obviously. I think I was probably in first grade when her thing happened. So I have no information, no firsthand knowledge. But the two statements that got her award, where she won her case and was given $5 million, was that he called her a whack job, a liar, and a con job. Do you realize those are verbatim the things that he called me? She got $5 million, and he got $600,000 from me. It's because I do porn. Because I'm not to be trusted. Because I must be a liar. That's what I'm saying, is that that's the picture that the media and the society has painted. And that's not fair. It is not any different than being judged or prejudiced against somebody for their race, their gender, their religious beliefs, their sexual orientation. It's not any different than that. Because I worked in the adult industry, I must be lying, and so I have to pay him. She had a respectable job, so she must be telling the truth, and he owes her $5 million. Do you see what I'm talking about? Anyway, I'm done with my tangent. You have another question?
So on that, obviously, that the phrase porn actress gets used a lot, and it's something which both the right and the left in America do, with the right as a way to sort of discredit, you and your testimony, and the left as a way to kind of, amplify his crime, which is actually slightly irrelevant to the case. It's about a business, falsification. So
But it's clickbait. It's salacious.
exactly. And so what do you think about the sort of like the moralizing or moralization of this issue, particularly of all the religious groups who are sort of backing it?
I think it's disgusting, and I think it should have nothing to do with anything. Do you think that this would have been nearly as exciting, or would we have even seen it if I was an accountant or a nurse or I worked in a bakery? Can you imagine every time you saw Baker Stormy Daniels? Although those jokes do also kind of write themselves. But librarian Stormy Daniels, or accountant, or plastic surgeon Stormy Daniels, I wish. But nobody would have done that. Oxford students, that nobody would, it wouldn't be a thing, but because it's porn star, it's clickbait, it's enticing, it takes away from the real issue at hand. And the same can be said for the other side. And I'm not up here bashing one side versus the other. Like, they both do it. And I can't even find the words to, like it's one side says I shouldn't be trusted because I'm a porn star, and the other side, although they trust me because it fits their narrative, makes it more disgusting that the person that he had an affair with worked in the adult industry.
Yeah.
It's equally bad.
Absolutely. And as you say, there's a lot of kind of like co-opting by these political forces of what's going on. And even people, as in yesterday, the date was set for the trial of March. A lot of people saying, that's a sort of, he's saying that's electorally, intervention, because that's when the primary campaigns happen, all this stuff. What do you hope to achieve from the trial, on a personal level, when it sort of comes to sort of redemption and sort of feeling vindication?
On a personal level, that's it. It's vindication. It is proof that I am telling the truth. And to give you another example of clickbait, I was asked by Piers Morgan not so long ago if I thought that Trump should go to jail for what he had done and against me. And I said no. I said I did not think that he should do prison time for the crimes he committed against me. Why? Because they're not punishable by jail time. They're civil. You know what I mean? Like, he lied about me, he defamed me, he had somebody threaten me. None of those are crimes that you do prison time for. So imagine if I had said, I want him to go to prison because he called me a liar and a horse face. I'd have been painted as a raving lunatic, right? So I said, no, absolutely not. He should not. He should be held accountable. It should be, the punishment should fit the crime. I said he absolutely should go to jail if found guilty of those things that he is accused of that do hold jail time as a punishment. But what did the article say? Stormy Daniels decides Trump is innocent and shouldn't go to jail. That's not what the fuck I said. That is not what I said. So yes, I mean, the trial is, I hope that he is found guilty of the things that he is found guilty of. We all know that most of them are true, but don't take my word for it. Please do your own research. And the things that have jail time as possible punishments, I hope they're absolutely maximum, and then his spray tan can match his outfit. And then in my personal case, I very much look forward to turning over all the evidence and things. And I mean, I'm going to file against him again for defamation again, because most recently he said that I was once again a liar and a con job, and that he met me one time, and it was when he took that photo and he's got the red hat on. I saw him 6 times and I can prove it. And people so he called me a liar repeatedly. And so I'm going to go after him again. And you know what? It might cost me another $600,000 because I do porn. But it is the right thing to do, and I am not going to back down. So I'm hoping that by going to court and standing on the stand, because I'm the only one who hasn't changed their story, I'm the only one who hasn't lied, I'm the only one that does have actual evidence, not just fabricated nonsense, that maybe somebody will pay attention.
And a lot of this sort of, comes from the NDA you signed in 2016, and you said that this was after you'd been threatened, and it worked for you for this to just sort of go away, and for both parties. Do you regret that decision now to sign the NDA?
That's a very complicated question, and one that I spent a lot of time thinking about. I'm not going to say that I regret it, because here's the thing. That is what he did that was actually illegal. Think about it. I get a lot of flack for saying, like, if you had just come forward in 2016, he wouldn't have been president. Are you shitting me? He literally said, I grabbed women by the pussy the day before, and sleeps with all these other women. Why do you think the porn star would have made a difference? It wouldn't have. It would have not stopped the election. It would have not suddenly made people believe I was telling the truth then. You know what I mean? Like, he would have gotten away with it, and he would not be indicted right now. Why is he indicted? Not because of where he put his penis. Honestly, who cares? It was very unimpressive then, and it still is. Like, that doesn't matter. Literally, that doesn't matter. That's not illegal. It's distasteful. But that's between the two people that are in the act and the spouses or people in the relationships. It is not illegal. It's gross. It smelled weird. But it's not illegal. What is illegal is the hush money. If I had not signed the NDA, he would not have been indicted. So do I regret signing it? Part of me is very strongly no, because this is the only chance that I may have to stop him and get my voice heard. That's what took it to this level. The other part of me is like, fuck yeah, I regret signing it. Could have saved myself $600,000 and a lot of angry tweets. But you know what else? Then I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you and embarrassing the hell out of you. So. Yeah.
Everything works out.
Yeah.
And just to go back to, you know, your sexual encounter in 2006, you've previously said that it wasn't non-consensual.
Right.
So quite ambiguously phrased. And I was just wondering if you could expand upon that. And, you know, whilst you said, you know, he didn't force himself upon you, what sort of like power dynamics, even more subtly, might have been at play to make it like that?
So, in my opinion, has changed a little bit on that as well over the last few years, just with more reflection and seeing how he's continued to treat people and how he's been so entitled. And having a daughter who's becoming older as well and more of a woman herself. And this is a very unpopular thing. I'm sure this is what's going to be my clickbait for tomorrow, is going back to that whole infamous, you know, grab him by the pussy. He said, women will just let you do this. If you're famous, you can just grab him by the, right? He's not entirely wrong. He wasn't wrong. It was not right of him to say it. It was especially stupid to be videotaped saying it, because he's kind of an idiot, let's face it. But he wasn't wrong. He wasn't lying. Women do let you, if you're a person of power, whether you're a celebrity, a rock star, rich, go back and read his quote again. Ladies and gentlemen, read it again. He said, they will just let you do this. And he is absolutely right. Ugh, I just got nauseous saying Trump was right about something. But it's true, he was right. It's right because he was entitled. It doesn't make it okay. He shouldn't have done it. But it's true because we are in a society where it's not okay for us to stand up. It's not okay for us to have boundaries and speak up, especially as women. Also for men, this does go both ways. I know men who have been assaulted as well. And it's even harder for them because they are shamed even more for speaking up. But it does tend to happen a little bit more with you know, men in power doing it to women. Those are just statistics and numbers. So that's a big deal. And when I go back to what you just asked, I said it was not consensual or non-consensual. I was not beaten. I was not chased down the street. I was not held at gunpoint. I was not slammed against the wall and my mouth covered and viciously raped. That did not happen. And we all know I could definitely take his ass had I decided to. Kind of wish I had. Going back in time, that's what I would do. I'd beat the fuck out of him. And I could definitely outrun him, especially considering it was in his underwear. But it also wasn't consensual because it was not agreed upon and I did not speak up. I was in my 20s. He was 60. I come from the South. You know, for those of you who are familiar with the States, I'm from Louisiana. It's very Southern. You be a good girl, respect your elders, keep your mouth shut. You're talking about a man who would be the equivalent of the age of my grandfather. And I wasn't told it was okay to speak. I'm very different now. And I was, be a good girl, keep your mouth shut, respect your elders. And I was also just completely caught off guard and shocked that I came out of a bathroom and that was in its underwear. Any of you would have had a moment of shock. And then, I did think to myself, this must be my fault. What did I do to deserve this? Which is that whole victim, shaming the victim mentality of like, you deserve to be raped because your skirt was too short. It's all part of that same thing, and I was a victim of that mentality as well. I say that it was not non-consensual because I didn't say no. I didn't fight back. I didn't push him away. I didn't scream for help. And that's one of the things they also shamed E. Jean Carroll on the stand for a few weeks ago. Why didn't you scream? I don't know exactly what her answer is, but that shook me to tears because I also did not scream. It just didn't register to me to even do so. So I believe that she just was shocked in that moment. But looking back, and I was also so adamant, like, I don't want to be like crying wolf. I don't want to make this I don't want it to be like, oh, you do porn, you deserve this. Like, I also was in a weird kind of fucked up way protecting my career and my choice to be a powerful woman in the adult industry. I didn't want to be discredited as a director. I was an up and coming director, and you see a director, especially then, this was, several years ago in the adult industry, fighting to be taken serious, to be strong, to be powerful, to be outspoken. I didn't want to admit that I didn't stand up for myself when it's my job to stand up for all of these people under me on set. But looking back, it was definitely, he cornered me. He baited me. He physically intimidated me by putting himself between me and the door. He knew there was a very large bodyguard outside that door. I could definitely have kicked Trump's ass. Not sure if I could have taken that bodyguard. Did that bodyguard have a gun? I don't know. I still don't know. Was it my fault for going there? Would I be blamed and accused? Obviously, yes, because I still am. And so I froze. He knew that I wanted to be a director. He threw it in my face, saying, if you want to be on Celebrity Apprentice and be taken seriously as a director and given these opportunities, you have to prove that you'll do it at whatever it takes. So looking back, my opinion of that has changed a little bit. He was very entitled. He was intimidating. He was manipulative, and he was more than twice my age. Ew.
And just sort of, thinking back to that time, nearly 20 years ago, and as you say, all the sort of internalized sort of stigmas that you had and reasons to blame yourself. I think that, lots of modern sex education is trying to move away from that as much as possible. Yeah. And as you say, how much do you hope that through achieving justice in this situation, you will be able to stand up for everyone who maybe, unfortunately, sort of 20 years ago wasn't able to stand up for themselves and sort of and be a role model, and to ensure that these sorts of experiences are not the same ones that our generation and your daughter's generation will have to experience?
Well, I don't know if I can stand up for everyone else. That sounds exhausting. But I do hope that they will be inspired to stand up for themselves and to have these open communication and dialogue. And that's one of the things I learned doing that television show, For the Love of DILF, the gay dating show, is listening to these gay men have these conversations with each other. It was very inspiring. When in their own element with their own people, they are so confident in talking about their bodies and their boundaries and their limitations and their experiences. And my wish is that everyone here in this room and outside of this room can have the same conversation. We need to be able to have talks and take the shame away from it. I told the student press earlier that my daughter has been raised to be able to talk about things very openly and not be ashamed of her body and nudity. And she was telling me a story about when she was at school the other day, some of her little girlfriends, they're all about that age, were passing some very, very bad misinformation amongst themselves about getting their periods. And my daughter was like, whoa, what? No, that's not right. And so they're talking to each other, and they're giving each other wrong information. I mean, it's just like, years ago, if you masturbate too much, you're gonna go blind. Like, that's the kind of stuff. It's just like, wait, what? Where did you get that? And my daughter's like, well, why don't you just ask your mom? And they looked at her like she was out of her mind. I could never. And she immediately said, thank you, Mom, for you and Dad, because her dad's pretty cool too, for being able to have these conversations. And she was so shocked and horrified that that's not how it is in every family, that it's not like that. And now it goes both ways. I'm not just gonna sit up here and defend women, because it goes both ways. If we take the shame out of sex and talking about sex, it also helps men. Because like I said earlier, a man is a stud and a lady is a slut. So you have this situation where these two people hook up, right? And the guy goes and tells everybody, and he's a stud and he's bad. And then the girl is then shamed and brutalized for it. Imagine how great it would be if she could fire back and be like, yep, we went twice and it was great. It would shut everybody down, right? They can't, you take the power away. Like, if somebody calls me a slut, I'm like, excuse me, that's a rich, successful slut. Somebody's like, oh my God, you banged Billy last night? Yes, I did, twice. Where are they gonna go with that information? Like, they can't shame you, but you have to have the confidence, and it can't be bad. Nowadays, either the girl is so bullied that I go back, the internet cannot hurt you. She's so bullied and ostracized that either she falls in depression or attempts suicide or drops out of school. Like, her life is ruined. She's just bullied incessantly, and it does this horrible damage to her. Or she panics and retaliates by then accusing the guy of doing something that he didn't do. Should he have bragged to his friends? No, it's kind of a dick move. But it's even worse if she goes, I didn't want to, he raped me, or I don't remember. Because she's not okay with telling the truth. Do you understand how it goes both ways? So next time you want to brag about hooking up with somebody, you might want to think about both sides of that.
And I'm conscious that, I'm very happy and very pleased that you came to the Oxford Union, partially because, one of the things we really want to do is promote sort of open forums for discussing things in a sort of rational and fair way, which is something that, as we spoke about earlier, the polarization in the media doesn't happen all that much. And just on, the letter that you spoke about from 2018 that you sort of felt forced to sign because they said, and you sort of signed in a kind of false way. Yeah. A few months after that, in a court case, you showed that the NDA itself was invalid because Trump had never signed it.
Right.
In January 2018, when you signed that letter denying the affair, did you have did you know that Trump hadn't signed the NDA? Did you have any kind of inkling that it wasn't valid, or did you think it was totally binding?
I'm not sure, to be completely honest, what the timeline was.
Sure. Okay.
I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
No, that's absolutely fine.
That 6 months was pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, of course.
So I can't remember if. Yeah, I can't remember.
But you felt by Trump's lawyers that this was something that you had to sign, even if you could instantly kind of renege on it.
Exactly. Oh, you're asking him when I signed the
letter?
I didn't know that his thing was invalid because he had signed a side letter.
Sure.
And I thought that was enough. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And so following on from that, into the kind of ammunition that Trump or Trump supporters might use, you've previously, even tonight, made a lot of sort of derogatory, comedic comments about sort of Trump's sort of sexual performance and sort of his anatomy and stuff. Do you think that sometimes these comments can be sort of taken to fuel people who are saying, oh, you're just making these, defamatory allegations?
Yes, absolutely. And it is absolutely body shaming and not something I would ever do. And it used to make me uncomfortable that I am body shaming and mocking Trump. But I did not do that until he did it to me first. And he's used to bullying people, and I'm not standing up. And when he started calling me a liar, Trust me, I wish he had a birthmark that looked like the state of Texas on his back, or anything else that I could point out that was proof that I had seen him naked besides his penis. But he called me a liar, and I'm not a liar. So it's kind of the only thing I had to go to prove that I was telling the truth. And you want to know how I know I'm telling the truth? Is because we all know that if I was lying and he had this huge, massive endowment, he would have dropped his pants and showed it to all of us a long time ago. It's bigly, huge, huge. He would have dropped his pants and shown all of us that I was wrong. But he hasn't, so who's right?
And my final question before I open up to the floor, I just wondered, another sort of thing which you've been sort of criticised of is your the strip tour that you did in 2018. What was your reasoning behind that? Was that a kind
that's a very good question. And another awesome example of the media and clickbait. That strip tour that I suddenly launched was already in place. That is the same, most of those clubs I had been to at least 2 or 3 other times in the previous 10 years. You don't wake up at 40 years old and go, I've got an idea. I'm gonna get naked under bright lights for money. That does not happen. Do you know how much hell damage your ass has at 40? These are clubs that I had already been booked to go to. I was already a stripper. They call it a feature entertainer when you go and headline at clubs. I was already doing that. The only difference is there was a lot more press, and a club owner came up with the awful title of Making America Horny Again. I fought that tooth and nail and made them take it down. And the reason that the club owner came up with that slogan, it was one of the first clubs that I was booked at to go to after the story broke, which, by the way, I can prove it by showing my contracts that were signed. The contract for that appearance was signed 6 months before the story broke. I was already supposed to go there. Now, the club owner obviously chose to capitalize on it because he is a businessman, but do you want to know the real reason he called it Making America Horny? He knew that every other club and publication would pick that up and run with it, and he trademarked it and sued all of them. Things you don't know. So that was already my job, to go to clubs and feature dance. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say that I didn't get a lot more offers and the dates didn't fill up and I got a lot more money for doing so. Yes, but I didn't launch that tour because of this or to capitalize on it. I was already doing it.
All right. Well, I think this is a perfect time to open up to some questions from the floor. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, the member in the second row here. If you just stand up and get the microphone.
Hello. So you won an award in the adult film industry. I was wondering, where do you actually keep the award? Is it like on display on your mantelpiece?
So, yes, I have between 40 and 45 of them total. There are some that I have in a box put away, like best blowjob, or ones that I feel like I didn't really deserve. Those are put away. But the ones I'm most proud of are like Screenplay of the Year, all of my Best Director awards, my Hall of Fame awards, things like that. They are actually on a display case in my house. And my husband has been in the adult business for a few years longer than I have. And now we have competing award cases. And I like to point out how many more of them I have than him. Love you.
Healthy competition. Yes, why don't we go to the member just here?
I love that question.
Stormy, thank you for being here. I admire your courage to speak up and just want to thank you. And I wanted to ask in the moment where you decided to speak up against one of the most powerful men at the time, what was your decision process and what made you say yes to that, knowing what kind of vitriol you would experience, or probably not even knowing the extent, but...
So to be clear, your question is when I decided to
speak out
after the NDA?
Yeah.
Okay. It was in that hotel room that I mentioned earlier where they came to my room and bullied me into signing something. I was okay with saying nothing. Once again, look at what it was. It's not like somebody was like, please don't tell the world you had sex with Brad Pitt. I'd have been like, Should I take down that billboard that says hashtag the prep bitch? So I was fine with saying nothing. I was not okay with lying, and I don't like to be bullied. And it was when they came to my room and said that, and it was the third time that it had happened, and I wasn't allowed to defend myself. And I signed it, and I felt like once they were out of my room, and I locked the door, and I sat down, and I just was like, you know what? Fuck this motherfucker. And it was in that moment, and I decided to come forward. And I was already booked to be on the Jimmy Kimmel show that day. And I went to the studio, and I pulled his producers aside, and I was like, we need to talk. This is what happened. And I don't know if I can flat out say something yet, but all I will tell you is tell Jimmy to look at my signature really carefully. And luckily, Jimmy Kimmel is a very smart man, and he caught what I was trying to say, and then opened the door for me to say it. And it was immediately then that I fired the attorney that I'd had in that moment that I didn't really know, and started looking for another one. And that's a whole separate shit show into the Avenatti land that we don't need to go down. But it was in that moment that I was just like, oh hell no.
Next question. Yes, let's go to the member in the mask all the way in the back row.
Hi, Stormy, fellow American. Thanks for being here. A couple of weeks ago in the New York Review of Books, Fintan O'Toole made some interesting points contextualizing your great battle. So first, he describes you as appearing in this process as, quote, an avenging angel, not just for all the insults Trump had delivered to his enemies, but for all the sins of the patriarchy. So I wonder first if you could speak about your perhaps unplanned experience of becoming a champion for so many women and for feminist ideals, and thank you for that. Second, could you speak to the phrase in the article, quote, a debasement of democracy is inherent in the movement of this kind of performativity, from the periphery to the center of the discourse surrounding the US presidency. So what's your take on this? The fact that American politics has gotten to this place where Stormy and Trump enter the ring together as opponents. Thanks very much.
I think we lost a little bit of that question. Could you rephrase?
It's like this weird, it's like a weird echo.
The summary is first, what's your experience of becoming a champion for women, perhaps unplanned one? Second is, what do you make about the fact that, there's this discussion of American democracy as having been debased by, the fact that we're having this kind of battle between you and Trump, that he can be taken down in that way?
Okay, I think I heard, it's like a weird echo. You're asking one, what is it like to be considered like a champion for women?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's your journey in getting there?
It's terrifying, and I did not ask for this. When it first started, and I was doing the strip club tour, like I said, I had been doing these things for years, and suddenly I looked out in the crowd, and it's not a bunch of men in suits or on business outings or bachelor parties waving money. It's these groups of women, and they're crying. And it always reminds me of funny. We were just watching this on television the other night. I don't know if you guys are too young to ever seen A League of Their Own, but where he infamously says, "There's no crying in baseball. Like I can't tell you, I'd go up to these people. There's no crying in titty bars. What are you guys doing? Like stop crying. You're freaking me out." And they would come up to get autographs, and it used to be people buying signed porn DVDs or copies of my Playboy magazine or Penthouse, and now it's just women giving me money and telling me that I'm a unicorn and a hero and I have to save the world. No pressure. How about I just light my nipples on fire for you and we call it a day? Do you want me to see me light my nipple on fire again? And they're like, no, you have to save. So it was very daunting and it's a lot of pressure. And it was extremely hard for me to deal with in the first, it still is, but in those first 8 or 9 months, it was brutal. And I would just go back to the hotel rooms or the tour bus after my shows or after appearances and just sob. Because I was like, they don't even want to look at I liked it better when they wanted to look at my butthole. Now they want me to save the world. Like it's just so much pressure and so scary. And you feel all this energy just being dumped onto you and people crying. And then they begin to share their stories with you. And, I'm standing at a table trying to sign a nude photo to this horny fan. And I have another woman crying about how I've inspired her to press charges against her rapist. It's a very, very weird place to be. And it was a lot. And then my book came out. And the thing about my book is the stories about the molestation when I was a child was not in the first draft of that book. For the same exact reasons that I didn't speak everything about how I felt about that day with Trump, because I didn't want to seem unpowerful. I didn't want people to be like, oh, that's why she does porn, because they were all abused. I didn't want to give anybody that power to control the narrative about who I am and why I do what I do, because they are not related. But people like to spin that for their own agenda and for clickbait. But then I decided to put it in. And I put it in, and I kind of forgot that I put it in, because it was so traumatic. It was something that I had never talked about for like 30 years. And I put it in, and I forgot. And the very first interview that I did when the book was released, I actually think the book wasn't out yet. I think it was like the day before, because the press gets like advance copies. And it was 60 Minutes Australia, and they flew to come and interview me. And the lady was very lovely who interviewed me, and we had been chatting, so I thought we were friends. And then the camera came on, and the very first question out of her mouth was, what was it like to be raped when you were 9? What? Like, I almost like died. And then I was a shit show all over again, and I got in a fight with my then boyfriend. I can't believe you made me put this in there. Why did you do this to me? I hate you. And then the stories started coming in and saying like, thank you for putting that in. And I got a lot from people, you know, all over. Thank you for putting this. You gave me the courage to either quit my job or leave this abusive relationship or press charges or just seek therapy or just admit it. So that I felt like I had done the right thing. And then it started to sit easier with me. And I felt better about my choice. But I didn't feel completely comfortable and good about it until I got 2 messages from people that I actually know. And it's easy, no matter how powerful someone's story is or how traumatic, it's still a little bit easy to disassociate and not say that they're not real people, but, you know, it was just 2 private messages I got from people that I really that I knew in real life, that I knew pretty well. And they were from 2 people that I least expected had ever been abused or raped. And one is a friend of mine who is a very, very powerful, badass chick that I would be like, wait, somebody tried? If somebody said like somebody did something to her, I'd be like, they're dead, right? Because she fucked them up. And her story was very unique because she had decided not to come forward. And that was her truth to power, is keeping her truth to herself. Because her mother was ill and couldn't handle it and would have blamed herself. And I respected that, her decision. The other was my best friend growing up, who was a boy, a straight boy, who had been sexually abused by his older male cousin. And those are the 2 that rocked me to the core. So to go all the way back to what you were asking, it was a bit of a roller coaster. And at this very moment, like right now, I've made peace with it. But if you ask me the same question in an hour, I may throw myself on the floor and tell you that I'm a fucking idiot. Like, who knows? And then the other question was basically like, how do I feel about this being the face of like, what is the word?
Democracy, I think.
Yeah, like how it's being spun into this. Yeah, it's pathetic and embarrassing, and I'm ashamed of not just the United States political system and our politicians, but sort of the world in general, because we're all feeding into it. And it's making a hypocrisy. And it's, you know what? It's like watching a soap opera, which is all I'll go back to, it's clickbait. And I am unfortunately the star of As the Trump Turns. And yeah, that's not such a great feeling.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. Let's
He
go.
He hates me, by the way.
Let's go to the member in the white shirt, just there. Yeah.
Thanks very much for speaking today. I was just wondering, so much media coverage about you is often linked to what this means for Trump. You know, the trial to do with you, what does it mean for Trump's presidential run? Given that clearly so much of what you've been through is related to issues that you care about very deeply, whether that's sex education or women's rights, do you ever wish that media coverage was focused a little bit more on that and less on Trump?
Oh my goodness, 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. That's what sort of has led me to the conclusion that I spoke about when I first entered. Like, it just feels like it's all for nothing. I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall. All anybody wants to talk about is his penis. When I do stand-up comedy, I do this thing where I get up and I talk, and everybody who comes in gets a note card. And they get to ask questions as you guys are, but they get to do it anonymously because the questions are way more funny that way. And I can guarantee you that out of a room this size, if I was in a comedy club and every single person in here got a note card and got to write their question that they wanted me to answer, at least. And it doesn't matter what area of the country I'm in or what country I'm in, because I've also done comedy in other countries. Anything, at least, in a room about this size, at least 15 would ask me how big Trump's dick is. I'm not kidding. Like, that's what's most important here. No one stops to think, out of all the women that Trump probably was inappropriate with or slept with, why were there only 2 of us approached and offered hush money? It's not about the sex. It doesn't matter about that. It was because I overheard other things. In Carrie McDougal's case, she just came forward a couple days ago and gave her first interview since all of it happened. And I didn't even know this part of her story, that she saw him between 5 and 6 times a month. She deserves a Purple Heart or some sort of medal or therapy, I'm not sure which, for 10 months. I saw him 6 times total. Only sex the 1 time because I never went alone again. I didn't put myself in that situation. But I did go and meet him and have conversations about getting onto Celebrity Apprentice 5 times, other times, and I know what kind of information I am privy to and the things I overheard and was told in just those 5 times. I can't imagine the things that she knows, and that's not the questions that the press are interested in. Those are things that were cut out of both my 60 Minutes interview and my book. It doesn't matter about the penis and the vagina. I overheard him talking about some really fucked up stuff and using derogatory statements, racial slurs, plans to overthrow, a game show, things about our government. And they only want to focus on those sordid sexual details that are very tiny details, pun intended.
I think we have time for one more question. The member here in the blue shirt in the second row has been very persistent.
So looking retrospectively, not having to do with Trump or anything, but what do you feel about the moral implications of being an active member in kind of the adult film industry, and I guess the impact maybe on specifically youth and kind of the way that youth maybe sees women because of that?
That's actually a really good question. So when I chose to get into the adult industry, the choice was sort of easy for me, easier than it would be for others, and which is the same thing that, I know this isn't supposed to be about the Trump situation, but it's also what made me such a thorn in his side, because I don't come from a large family. I don't have any family. I don't have a dad or a brother that could be fired from their job. I don't have a mom that could get kicked out of her church group. You know what I'm saying? And I don't work, I wasn't part of any society or anything that I could be shamed. I didn't go to church. So I'm very dangerous in the fact that I can't be shamed. So it made it easier for me to get into the adult industry. Because I had nobody that could be punished for my decisions or embarrassed for that. Does that make sense? And I was very in control of my sexuality and was okay with sex as a whole and enjoyed pornography in my personal life. But I also, to full disclosure, to be brutally honest with you guys, when I only had knowledge of the porn that I enjoyed and I watched, I didn't know the scope of the things that were in it. It's like if somebody asked you about a movie and all you had ever seen was cartoons, or all you had ever seen was rom-coms, right? And then you suddenly find out that there's action movies or documentaries, but you don't even know those things exist, right? So that's kind of how it was when I got into it. And there's a lot of things in the adult industry that I don't condone and I am not fans of and I don't participate in. All I can do is be responsible for the films that I make and that I produce and star in. I spent almost 20 years under contract with Wicked Pictures, and they were very female-driven. Every sex scene I ever did for that company, even with my own real-life partners or husband, was with a condom. The women were in control. There was nothing derogatory. They had storylines. They're all, I just turned in a movie yesterday, the most recent movie called Redemption, that I wrote and directed it, and it just got turned into the company Adam and Eve yesterday, and it went to a therapist today for review. Those are the projects that I choose to work on that show sexuality in a positive way that can be used as a marital aid. And the flip side of that, I also, in a way, have to even protect, to a degree, the most hardcore, outrageous sex things that you can possibly find, and reminding everyone that it is entertainment. You don't watch Guardians of the Galaxy and think raccoons really talk. You know what I mean? Like it's adult pornography should not be sex education; it is sex entertainment. Does that make sense? But there are some things that are, pretty graphic, and that I would not be okay with my daughter seeing necessarily. Although in her case, she would be like, well, "That's not right. They're not doing it right," because she's kind of a badass. But so it goes back to opening the communication and having conversations. Kids wouldn't be apt to peruse the internet and try to find sex education on Pornhub if their parents had conversations with them. So it's a very double-edged sword, and I try my best to just do what I feel is right and things that I support, but I do understand what you're saying, and it is an issue.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Could everyone please stay seated while Stormy and I leave the chamber? But before that, could you all join me in a very, very warm round of applause? It's been such a pleasure to have you. Thank you.